Khabib fought Justin Gaethje.
Yeah.
I didn't know because there were rumors that maybe he would have called me out. And I was doing the French broadcast in the Sport TV, RDS, and I was expecting, I had butterfly. I was like, God damn, I was going to have to go back in there.
All right, here we go, baby. The historic event that is UFC 300 is upon us, so we're bringing in one of the biggest legends in the history of the sport to discuss that and a bunch of other topics. Welcome to George Rush. St-Pierre. George, comment ça va?
Ça va très bien, thank you.
Très bien, je peux parler un petit peu de français. Not a lot of bilingual MMA content out there, but maybe we'll look to get that going. For the sake of this interview, though, we will stick to English. So let's start with something very important right off the bat. I'm hoping you can provide a little bit of clarity on something for us. So on December 13th of 2023, you tweeted, "When you make love to a woman of another nationality, do it well because you represent an entire country." Now, you actually did tweet this. So what inspired you to share that message with all your followers?
Well, I read that from a quote of another guy, and I thought it was very interesting. I was like, you know what? This quote is true. It's unknown. I need to make it known. I need to make it public. That's why I tweeted.
Yeah, you gotta make us.
So I took the credit for it, but it's not me who invented it.
There we go. Okay, yeah, you got to make us Canadians look good. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about UFC 300. I got a bunch of other topics we're going to hit on. So, massive event, a landmark event in the history of the company and the sport. And now, the original thought around the UFC 300 main event, it's a pretty good main event, but they were originally thinking it was going to be something crazy, something extremely special. A lot of big names were thrown out there, rumored, including yours. Were you approached about having any interest in competing on the card?
No, I wasn't. It was only a rumor, but it's true that there was a lot of big name that we were expected to be there. Like I'm thinking of Conor McGregor, perhaps. I don't know who else, but like Conor, just him, he's probably the most popular fighter, and we all thought his comeback would have been for UFC 300. I don't know if the UFC had an initial plan that fell, and then they had to switch their card. But I mean, for the purists of the sport, the finale of the UFC 300 is still very interesting. You have Pereira versus Jamal Hill.
Yeah.
You know, so it's gonna be very interesting. You know, it's an enigma.
Okay, yeah, very deep card, absolutely. So that's UFC 300. You've, of course, competed on UFC 100, one of the best cards in the history of the company. You defended your title against Thiago Alves. Now, that's a long time ago. So what in the sport has changed the most from that point when you were probably at your most active until this point here at UFC 300?
Well, first, there's a lot more shows now. There's fights almost every week. Of course, the main I would say the main big shows are not every week, you know, but there's a lot more athletes in the organization now, so they're forced to make fights almost every week. The sport has evolved a lot. Athletes' performance are much better. Not because I think athletes are better. I think it's because they have access to more knowledge and more technology, better technology. An example of this is when I was young, in order to learn a new armbar, for example, I needed to be physically present in a class in New York in my jiu-jitsu training academy to learn a new armbar. Now I can grab my phone, go on YouTube, and I can learn it, and I can even pass it on to someone in Australia. So the way knowledge can be given is much more efficient nowadays than it used to be. Therefore, the knowledge is a weapon, and the performance are better.
Okay, so obviously a ton of growth in the sport from UFC 100 to 300. What do you think is the future of the sport? What do you think is going to change by the time we get to UFC 400?
Well, I think it's going to keep on getting better and better. You can't stop the progress. And it's interesting. I mean, I think as good as the athlete are today, they will be even better in the future. And you know, I was fortunate to be in an era where I could make this for a living. You know, if I look at my predecessor, they had great fighters. They really inspire me. But unfortunately, the money wasn't there at the time.
Yeah.
I was just very fortunate to be in an era where I could make it out for a living. You know.
Okay, so if we insert you in your prime into today's UFC, how do you think you would fare?
Well, if you put me in my prime, I think it's not a long time ago, and I think I would have done well. And of course, if you give me the knowledge and the tools that they now have, and you put me in my prime of having this knowledge and these tools, would make me even better. So it's all about technology. You know what I mean? If you talk about any other sport, it's the same thing. Even Einstein says it best. If I've seen further than my predecessors, because I'm standing on shoulders of giant. It's true in science, but it's also true in sport. So they learn from their predecessor. I've learned from my predecessor, so therefore I don't have to commit the same mistake. I've learned from them. It makes me having a head start on them. And the future generation have a head start on me. And as good as they are today, they will be even better in the future.
Absolutely. Okay, so you're obviously a student of the sport. We always see you out at the fights. 299, we saw you there in Miami. I'm sure you watch all the big pay-per-views, all the big main events. Who are some of your favorite fighters to watch now?
There's a lot of it. I like Volkanovski. I like Islam Makhachev. I like Oliveira. I like John Jones. I like there's Demetrius Johnson, Leon Edwards. I like Kamaru Usman. There's tons of guys that I like to watch. Cyril Gane, Thomas Penal. He's amazing.
Yeah,
you know, he's an
man.
Heavyweight,
He moves well for a
huge
big
guy
man.
that moves like a lightweight. It's unbelievable.
Okay, so that's from today, the fighters that you like presently. So, popular question, they always throw this out to MMA fighters past and present. Who's your Mount Rushmore of the sport? I'm sure you're too humble to include yourself. You can, though, if you'd like. So your four best fighters all time in the sport of MMA.
My number one is Royce Gracie, because I believe he has done things for his time that never been done, if you take that into consideration. However, if you put him in a cage today, I don't think he would have done so well, because the sport has changed. But if you give him the same tools and the same technology, maybe he would have done even better. But when I think Royce Gracie, because my inspiration, is the number one, and he's the first one. I think if you go for a perfect career, undefeated, you have to put Khabib Nurmagomedov. In terms of skill set, like Demetrius Johnson, it's just a perfect fighter. It's unbelievable. In terms of popularity, charisma, bring the sport to a bigger audience, Conor McGregor. And I would say,
That's four. You can throw a fifth one in there.
yeah, a fifth one I would say, let's say all weight combined. The one guy I would put like in a gladiator pit.
Yeah.
You put him in to see who would survive. Maybe John Jones.
Absolutely.
I think he's an heavyweight now. How would he do against Thomas Penal is a big question. It would be interesting if they fight each other. I mean, the older generation against the new generation.
Yeah.
But his resume speak for itself. So would be interesting,
Yeah, I hope to see that. So you've been away from the sport for a couple of years now. What do you miss most about being an active UFC fighter, and what do you miss the least?
Well, what I miss the least is the stress, of waiting before the fight. The waiting part is unbearable. I never liked it. I never liked to fight. However, I love to win. I love the freedom that it gives me, the money, the access of things that most people don't have, the fact that I can get the fruit of my labor, and the reward come from myself, like how hard I work. I can get the fruit of my labor from that. That's what I miss the most. But the fight itself, I don't like. I like the camaraderie that I have with my training partner, the science of the sport, the training, the fact that it gives me confidence. I'm in great shape. I love that.
What was the hardest fight for you, like the build up to it, not the actual fight itself, the most challenging build up to an opponent that you had in your career?
The toughest fight I had was my first fight with BJ Penn.
Okay.
BJ Penn was incredible. He's one of the best pound for pound of all time. And he was just the perfect fighter. He almost had no weaknesses except one. He was good. He was good everywhere, like no flaws. Like technically, physically, he was just a perfect fighter. But mentally, when everything went well, he was very strong. But when he felt resistance and he couldn't get through the resistance, he had a sudden drop. And I used that against him, and I knew that was his main weakness. And I know going into that fight, that was my only chance to win. And I had a very, very tough, during my first fight with him, I had a very, very hard first round. I won the second round, and I barely won the third round. Some people will say he should have won the fight. Some people say I won the fight. It was very close, and it took me a long time to recuperate. I won, but I've studied him, and that's why I did a much better performance in my second fight with him, because I've studied him. I knew that he was faster than me. He had a better reaction time than me. But while I was studying him, I'm very good at adapting, at becoming the perfect nemesis of my opponent. So I found out that his strengths and weaknesses. So I decided to go against his weaknesses, not try to match up his strength. And that's why I beat him much easier in the second fight. It was a much more dominant performance in the second fight, because I changed the way I fought. I used that to my advantage.
So speaking of that second fight, that's what some consider to be one of the original super fights, champion versus champion. But two other big fights that fans really, really, really wanted to see. They never worked out. They were rumored forever to be potentially happening. Anderson Silva and Khabib. Were either of those fights ever close to happening in the UFC?
Well, you need three entities to organize a fight. You need one of the fighter, the second fighter, and you also need the promotion. When I was in my prime and Anderson Silva was in his prime, we were competing in two different weight classes. And in order for the fight to happen, it was up to the promoter to make it happen. If you take the risk to get out of your line of competition because you're attempting something more risky, something different, you need to be reward for it. And the UFC didn't want to do it. And it was only a talk, but we never had like a serious talk with condition. My condition for that fight to happen would have been that first I need implement drug testing. That was one condition. And I wanted to make it in a catch weight, exactly. Because at the time I was aware that after the fight I would have to go back down to the weight that I'm competing at, which is 170 pounds. But and I know that Anderson Silva competed in Japan a few years prior to 168 pounds.
Yeah.
So I knew he could make the weight, no problem. He got probably bigger after, but it would have been an easier way to do it, to make it possible. But UFC never did it. To never try to respect those conditions.
Do you think they would have made the fight had he had a better, more impressive performance against Damian Maia? Because I'm pretty sure that's when it was at its peak of the rumor, you versus him, and then he was fighting. He just needed to get through Damian Maia, who was a heavy favorite, and it was a very lackluster fight, and maybe they pulled the rug then.
It's hard to know because they have an agenda. It's normal. They're running a business. The business is not by coincidence. It's calculated risk, and perhaps they brought me to Abu Dhabi in order for Anderson to call me if he would have had a dominant performance, but it didn't. So we'll never know. And next time I see Anderson Silva, I might ask him, you know, but I don't know. I was not aware of it if it was the case. And while they, you know, like I said, in order for a fight to happen, you need to, you know, I don't know what was Anderson's Silva's condition. Maybe it was different because Anderson was, when you go down a weight, you don't, it's not like you're, I mean, and you go up a weight, it's not the same that when you go down a weight.
Yeah.
If you go up a weight, you're fighting in a different weight class because you pass the weight limit that you're going to fight. But if you go down, you don't have that issue. So I don't know if he had some condition on that he wanted to the UFC to respect. We never talk about it, but it would be interesting.
Okay, so the second part of that question, and this one's more recently, was a fight versus Khabib ever offered or close to taking place?
So, yeah, the fight with Khabib was offered, but was offered in the bad timing. Khabib was already retired, and I was already retired. So both of us didn't want to do
interest.
It. The time that the fight could have happened, it was, I would say, after Justin Gaethje. When Khabib fought Justin Gaethje,
yeah,
I didn't know because there were rumors that maybe he would have called me out. And I was doing the French broadcast in Sport TV, RDS, and I was expecting, I had butterfly. I was like, God damn, I was going to have to go back in there because I have no choice. And he took his retirement. He took everybody by surprise, and including myself. So, you know, maybe it's a better ending, you know. And in a business standpoint for UFC, I understood why they didn't want this fight to happen earlier, because when you have a very dominant athlete who's champion, you want to keep the ball rolling. You don't want to take the chance to take that guy against a guy who's retired and will retire immediately after the fight, who's coming back only for one fight, to ruin everything. You better make many big fights than only one extra big fight. It's more lucrative for them. So they want to keep the ball rolling. So I understand for the business point of view of the UFC, but when they asked us to do that fight, it was already too late. Khabib was out, and I was talking to Dana. It was at the time that there was a rumor between Oscar De La Hoya and I to do a boxing, an exhibition in boxing for charity. And Dana, he asked me, and I asked him, I said, is Khabib said yes? He said yes. I said okay. I'll think about it and I'll call you back. Then I called Khabib's agent, and he told me no, he's not in because he's retired. Then I knew it was not true.
Okay, was there ever any consideration to actually defend the 185-pound title after you defeated Michael Bisping?
Yes, the reason why I retire first from after the fight is I developed a condition called ulcer colitis. It's an inflammation of the colon intestine, and people don't know, but during my training camp, I was on medication. It was bad. I had bleeding when I went to the toilet. The doctor said it was probably due to the stress and the fact that I was trying to eat to increase my weight. But it didn't work well. I got me sick. I should never have done it. I just should stay the same weight, and just Michael Bisping was much bigger than me anyway.
Yeah.
So I should have just take that out of the equation and just focus on skill instead of size. And I made a mistake. It got me sick, and after I didn't know what I had at the time, because to have a diagnostic, I needed to do what they call a colonoscopy, and it implement that you need to take something to empty your body.
Yeah. And
I was trying to put on weight, so I couldn't do it before the fight. So I did it after the fight. The diagnostic came back, and it's a condition that you have for the rest of your life. And they say that I developed that condition because I forced myself to eat, and plus maybe the stress. But the truth is they probably don't know where it comes from.
Yeah.
Maybe it's genetic. I don't know. So I started to implement fasting, and it took a few months, and it heals all my symptoms. But I retired back then. I retired because I was like, I cannot fight under those conditions. And I could have kept the belt for a year. Yeah. And run and parade with the belt, take the sponsor, the money. But I felt that it irresponsible. I thought it was disrespectful for me to do so.
Yeah.
So I relinquished the belt because I wanted for the athlete to keep the ball rolling. I don't want them to take the spot. I don't want to take the spotlight on me. A lot of people said to me that were close, "Oh, you should do it." I was like, "No,
no honor in
the
that.
respect for my peers. I don't want to do that."
Yeah.
So I relinquished the belt, and that's why I did it so quickly, because I knew it would have taken a while for me to get better, and I didn't know at the time how long it would have taken. So I'm glad now I'm 100% and I'm fully recovered from that.
So if there ever would have been a final fight, if all the dots connected, everything came together perfectly, it probably would have been Khabib, but the dots did
Yeah,
not
at the
connect
end, but
perfectly.
it didn't happen. The timing was not good. Yeah, because they knew what we were. UFC knew. Then I knew we were both retired, and that was like a one-time thing, you know. And it was worth it to do it if it would be only a one-time thing when you have two retired fighter that I just retired.
Yeah.
But the timing wasn't good. It was too late.
Okay, so you've obviously fought a very wide variety of opponents throughout your career. Out of all these opponents, who would you say, after you fought them, you determined this was the most underrated person I fought, someone that was much better than maybe you thought they were going to be?
I underestimate my opponent maybe once. Not that I underestimated him, but I didn't realize that. No, underestimate. It's a bad word to say. I did not realize that no matter how good you are, you always at one mistake to lose everything.
Yeah.
And I lost to Matt Serra, and I've learned that lesson. And it made me a much better fighter. And Matt Serra is much better than he's not only a grappler. And when coming into that fight, the first fight I had with Matt Serra, I was really concerned about his grappling, because that what he was known for, his grappling.
Yeah.
And he surprised me with something I never see coming. He catch me with a punch that I never see coming outside of my field of vision. And when that happened, my ego, because he stunned me, and I wanted to give it back to him right away. And I stepped into a slugfest. And then because I was dizzy, and he wasn't, I got cut with so many punches and forced to give up, because I was out. I was like on my way to be like unconscious, but I tapped out. And then I lost, and then I realized like I made the biggest mistake of my career, and I should never do the same mistake again. And yeah, I mean, it's amazing what he did. He was like 11-1 underdog. He was like, you know what? It's not luck. He works for it. Sure. It was a calculated risk, and my props to him. You know, he's an incredible fighter. You know.
Okay, so speaking of Matt Serra, you've had a lot of heated rivals during your time in the UFC. Matt Serra, Matt Hughes, Bisping, Diaz, throw Koscheck in there. I'm probably forgetting a couple guys. Out of all those most heated rivals, who do you get along with the best when you see now?
I think Matt Serra. We had a big rivalry.
Yeah.
Not the first. After the first fight, it started because he beat me. Then after the second fight, I beat him. But then after we became friends, and every time we text each other. Sometimes we're both Star Wars fans, and we're like geeks. We text each other all the time.
Nice.
Michael Bisping too is another guy that I'm friend with. There's nobody that I've fought that if they would need my help, I would not hesitate a second to help them. And I imagine, and hopefully it's the same way on the other way around, the other side. You know, I'm pretty sure that if I would be in trouble, if these guys could help me, I'm sure they would do so. You know, I could be naive to think that, but I'm under the impression that it's sort of a brotherhood.
Leave it all in the cage. So
yeah, so it's not personal. We try our best, and whatever happened, and then we move on. You know.
Okay, so when you were at your peak, when you were at your most active in the UFC, you did a really good job of introducing the jab to the sport and kind of showing that that's a bit of an underutilized weapon in MMA. What do you think the most underutilized tool or weapon in the sport is now?
I think the oblique kick, the kick to the knee. Because Bruce Lee used to say it long time ago. Use your longest weapon against your opponent nearest point, and a kick to the knee. That's what it is. A jab is not my longest weapon. My legs are longer, and the nearest point is the legs. Because when you're in a fight stance, your head is not the nearest point. It's the leg, the knee, boom.
Yeah.
So and that's I think it's brilliant.
Okay, so you kind of touched on potentially a boxing match with Oscar De La Hoya was kind of kicked around, an exhibition that never happened. But we're seeing a lot now, like legends of the sport, Anderson Silva, Vitor Belfort, Diaz, and Masvidal are having a boxing match. It's a really popular thing to do. I think an easy way to make some money probably too. Is this something that's ever been offered to you, or is it something that you've considered?
Yeah, it's stuff like that have been offered multiple times to me. Even Floyd Mayweather's, there's a promoter that want to organize this. The way he described it, it was a fair compromise between boxing and MMA against Floyd Mayweather. And I was retired. And I was like, you know what, this one, I'm interested. Then he flew in. I was in Austin, Texas. He flew in private plane. He landed. We have dinner. And I said, what's the deal? He said, it's a boxing fight, but in an octagonal ring. I'm like, okay, but what's the rule? What's the compromise? It's an octagonal ring, and you're allowed to do spinning back fists. I'm like, well, it's not really a fair compromise. Allowed me to throw kicks. I was like, oh, he's never gonna accept that. I said, okay, kicks higher above the belt. No, it's not gonna work. I said, okay, allowed me to throw him down. Oh, he's never wanted to go to the floor. I'm like, I'm not saying go to the floor. I'm saying like to throw him down, like boxing. But if I can take him down and then we stand back up. And he's like, no. I'm like, if you don't allow me to use my legs or to use my takedown, and I'm not talking about go to the ground, but just my throw, forget it, because it's a trap. I'm not that stupid, you know.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, I'm gonna get back to you. And so they went to talk to, I guess, to Floyd or one of his representatives, and then it didn't work. But I have stuff like that every like few months. Like the fight that are asked that if I want to participate, and I'm not interested anymore. I don't say I will never do it, you know, but I'm still an entertainer. But it needs to be something that is safer, and I would say something more fun, maybe perhaps for a charity or something like this. You know, I wouldn't do it for my days of trying to prove I'm the strongest man in the world is over. Was
there a weight discussed versus Mayweather? Because you got quite a few pounds.
We didn't went to that far. Okay. We didn't went to the rules. And when I saw that, I thought it was a fair compromise, and it wasn't. So I implement my condition, and you know, and they never got back. I guess it didn't work out.
Yeah, I think I saw you when it was like a broadcast. I think Jake Paul was involved, and you were talking about competing or something like that. I said, he's going to compete in something else again. But
I wanted to compete in grappling. I was supposed to do a grappling match. However, I tear my rotator cuff and my labrum partially. Now I'm still technically in rehab. I'm still not 100%, but soon I will be. And these sort of things are possible. You know, I might, you know, for a one event or something like this for fun, I might do it. But I need to get back 100% first.
What's like, besides health, what's the deciding factor in something like that? Is it someone gives you a ridiculous amount of money? Is that like the number one?
It's not only money. It's the event, the rules. Is there a charity? I like to do it for, you know, charity. That if there a cause. And I'm very busy now. I'm more busy now than I was when I was competing. So I have a lot of businesses and you know what I mean? So time is an issue for me. I have only 24 hours in a day. And if I prepare myself for a sporting event, I'm very proud. I want to be at my best, you know? So I need to take time for the preparation, because the key in this is preparation.
Quick thoughts on Jake Paul, Mike Tyson. I think a lot of people were surprised that really there's an age gap of, what is it, 30 years? Yeah. It's Jake Paul going to heavyweight. It's on Netflix, so it's a big spectacle. A lot of people are going to complain about it. Most people are going to watch. Yeah. Your thoughts on that fight?
well, it's an exhibition, and well, Mike Tyson for me is an idol. Like when I grew up watching him, and I really idolize him. I just hope he doesn't get hurt, and he doesn't get humiliated. I hope things will go well, and no matter what happens, I hope they're gonna both come back, and they're both gonna look good, from that prestation.
Okay, that's an awesome spot to end the interview, George. Thank you very much. Hopefully we can do this again sometime.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.